Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I talk with Kristian Livolsi, an entrepreneur, thought leader, and business strategy. Kristian has helped 1,300 business owners in 98 industries across 19 countries to find their purpose, lead with values, establish outcomes, build high-performing teams, and increase revenue and margins. Kristian has been involved in 80 ventures with 21 failures and 44 successful efforts. Kristian has been involved in 80 ventures with 21 failures and 44 successful exits. Those ventures have employed 2,131 people and served 1.48 million customers across 25 years of growth and scaling businesses. In this week's episode, expect to learn why it is important to have a 10x vision for your business, why we're all playing too small, the importance of standards, how to create win-wins in business, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Kristian Livolsi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Blake. It's great to be here, mate.
I was tempted to go the ski in there. I've just had to Livolsi. We had
Sorry, mate, everyone tries.
We had a little thing off air, guys. He gets Livolsi a bit, and I was like, I can see why so, but it's Livolsi. Mate, good to have you here. Good to connect with you. I think we briefly connected, or how we started connecting was actually through Taki's mastermind. Shout out to Taki Moore.
Yep.
As a former Adelaide person, that was kind of one of the first things that caught my eyes about you. So looking forward to chatting all things business and life. Before we get started, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today?
Okay, so I am a chief strategist. People always ask me, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm a strategist. I write strategies, whether it's people strategies, business strategies, marketing strategies, any kind of strategy. Essentially, I use game theory right through to scaling up and EOS models. I've studied them all. I'm a big fan of Jim Collins' work. So, that's pretty much it. I'm a father to two incredibly energetic children, Lavender and Leonardo, and my wife, Lucy, keeps me in check at the best of times. She's always keeping me very level-headed, which is awesome. We've got 5 companies at the moment in the group, 84 staff around the world, which can be challenging at the best of times, trying to lead that many people, especially when they're all in different states and different countries. But that's just how I like to run the businesses, lean. They're full circle, essentially. So we've got an advisory firm, we've got a media company, and we've got an outsourcing company that work together to service our clients. And that's, in a nutshell, I think that's pretty much it. I'm a dad, a husband, and a businessman. That's kind of how I love it.
So what's your day-to-day role look like? I know you said kind of strategist, but like, what does that look like in terms of the kind of meat and veg of that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, okay. So on a day-to-day, I start my mornings at 4:30. So I'm an early riser. So 4:30 in the morning, I'm up. I've got a morning ritual that I work through. And then my first calls normally start around 5. Depends on the day of the week, but normally 5 o'clock. And they're normally international calls. So we've got international clients. So I got a combination of one-on-one advisory work that I do. Normally what happens is I write the corporate strategies for these organizations. My one-on-one clients are 5 million plus a year companies. My biggest client's 120 million. The average client is in the tens. But when they started with me, they were around the 2s and 5s. So we've slowly been able to grow them. When I say slowly, we try and work to about a 25% compounded growth rate each year, which is hard work. It's not easy when you're moving companies of that size. When you're small, it's much easier. And then I've got 2 programs that we run. So I have multiple coaching calls, group coaching calls. One of our programs is called Customers on Demand. It's all sales and marketing driven for business owners. We don't have a niche. It's not like, some people go, we only mentor and work with coaches and consultants or allied health. My clients, 98 industries, right? And it's a bit like my career, Blake. So as in, like, you know, I'm a founder of 80 ventures, 44 exits. I don't want to tell you how many failures. 3 were catastrophic. They almost sent me bankrupt. And that was a long time ago. I haven't failed for a while, which has been really positive, but that's only because we've learnt from that. So essentially, I do calls until about 7:30 is my last call that I finish. Then I normally, next part of my day is I take the kids to school. It's something I do every single day without fail, unless I'm traveling or I'm overseas for whatever reason, or running intensives. So then what does it look like? Then I'd normally jump on. We've got a team huddle. That's how we run the whole group. So we have a team huddle early in the morning. I think it's 8:45. Like my life is run by my diary, right? Like I'm hardcore diary blocked. And so then normally it's any one-on-one work that still has to be in there, but there's not a lot of it. Try and do that early in the morning and late. Then I hit the gym. I started training again end of September. Surprisingly, I'm down 16.5 kilos on the scales, but we've also put on 7.1 kilos of muscle. I know this is your jam. I'm not a lunatic like you and your mates, right? Like I'm an ex-professional rugby player, so you know, and a front rower. So we don't do CrossFit running crazy things. So I started training with one of my really good buddies, Trent Mitchington, who has produced, I think, more gold medalist bodybuilders and fitness models than most coaches in Australia. And he's a really good mate of mine. And he trained me 10, 12 years ago, and I'm loving it, right? Like I've used every freaking excuse to not train. And I tried, but he's the only guy that can just motivate me. And we have a lot of banter when we train. So it's also good for the mind, but it's been really amazing. So I train at 10:30, 4 times a week. And people were saying to me, my wife says, like, you leave work in the middle of the day. I'm like, mate, middle of the day. That is my middle of the day. I've already started from 5 till 10. So I find that I'm pretty good at that point. Then I eat. And at the moment he's got me eating like a bucket load of protein. And then I jump in and then we have more calls. Then we have one of our programs, Growth School. That's for our bigger clients that are $500,000 or $1 million plus range. It's a group program. It's all about leadership and accountability and raising the standards. I've basically taken one-on-one strategy development and put it into a group program, which is very, very unique. And again, I've got 3 coaches that work for me in that program as well. And so then we do that 2 times a week. And then basically in the afternoons, I will do I'm chairman of 5 companies, not my own, like independent chair. So I'll have board meetings that are slotted in. So basically, mate, it's just busy, right? But when I say busy, I'm not a fan of the word busy. I probably should use the word productive because that's normally what I do. But my EA has my diary dialed in. I basically know when I'm going to have a cup of decaf coffee because I don't drink caffeine. And I know basically even my water consumption. Dan Martell's been harassing us all about making sure we drink 4 liters of water a day and keep hydrated. So I've been doing that too. But yeah, normally around 3 o'clock, I'm done. I then get out and go and pick up the kids, hang out with them for a bit. I then jump on more calls depending on, because I've got a lot of European clients, so the time zones switch. So then I'll jump on some calls, normally no more than 2 hours, and by 7 p.m., mate, I'm either brain dead or I'm just hanging out with family, put the kids to bed, and then Lucy and I might have a chat for a bit about some stuff and work through some of the things that we need to get planned and ready for the week. And if it's exciting enough, we'll plan holidays, right? I thought you thought I was going to say something else.
I was waiting for it.
No, she just had a hip replacement. There's a no-go zone.
Some downtime, mate. Some downtime.
Yeah, but that's it. And normally I try to get to bed about 10. Like, I'm normally in bed by about 9, and I try, and get to sleep by 10. But I got to admit, I play a few computer games on my phone to de-stress. Most people say shouldn't be near a device. Mate, you shouldn't read emails at 9 o'clock at night. What you should do though is learn to be a master at FIFA, soccer, and cricket. And me and my competitive nature, like my son's tried to log in. Like we let him play on one of the other phones when I'm home. And he's like, Pa. He calls me Pa. He's like, Pa. He goes, you make millions of dollars. I said, I'm very competitive. I don't muck around. But I do that to de-stress. I'll play for about 15 minutes. I set a timer so that I don't get caught up in the moment. And I unwind for 15 minutes. If I'm losing, I add a little bit longer on the timer to get a couple of wins before I go to bed. But that's about it, right? That's kind of my day. And weekends, I don't work. I mean, I write on weekends because I'm also an author. But generally, I reserve that for hanging out with family. I don't do any housework. I don't do any gardening. We outsource all that. There's absolutely no way you're going to get me to do. I mean, apart from the fact that almost every plant that I grow dies, right? So I've kind of worked out that, it's probably not my jam. So, yeah. So I kind of have outsourced all those tasks that, that can consume my time that I don't need to do. Is that kind of what you're expecting, that kind of detail? Because I can go into more detail.
That was detailed. I loved it. What would you change this year? Is there anything that you change about your life, your lifestyle, how you do business? What's in or out for you in 2025?
You're going to love this because this is what I've been teaching our clients. We all play too small, Blake. Like legitimately, I'm talking about everything in life, right? Like you've got a baby on the way. You're gonna know exactly what that feels like, when you start to go, oh my gosh, because all of a sudden we have a lot of competing priorities, right? And so when for you, your child is going to become a competing priority. They have to become. That's your flesh and blood. It's your future, your wife, all of those things. But what happens is they become distractions too. And so as we grow, what I've found in the last 6-7 years, or 9-10 years being a father, is that the competing priorities have gotten in the way of my vision. And that's not a bad thing, but what it is that I realized towards the end of last year, and I'm already doing it, so I'm already doing something different. What I realized is I have lost that 10x vision. I've been doing a 2x vision. So to give you an idea, last year we doubled the size of the group. Right now, I'm not going to go into numbers, but we doubled the size of the group, which is a significant growth rate. And I'm talking about the 5 companies that we run, and every business doubled because that was the strategy. I realized that I'd been playing too small. I could have actually 10x'd it without that much more effort, and that's probably the biggest lesson: is that it takes no extra effort to have a 10x vision than to have a 2x vision. Like no extra effort. It's just written on a piece of paper. And then as Dan Martell says, it's 100% clarity, 100% belief, 100% of the time. He calls it the 300% rule. I'm pretty sure he stole it off Jim Rohn, but or someone. But the whole idea is, as soon as those things start to make sense to you, the penny drops, everything opens up. Right. And I think that was the biggest issue that I had last year. Right. Like, as in I was comfortable. I got really comfortable doubling. Yeah. And most people would be really happy. Most people would go, well, shit, you just doubled. And when I say doubled revenue, our growth margin is linear, has to grow at the same rate. Right. So our profitability scaled at a greater number than our revenue. Right. So we sit there, and I've also got a big belief that I have a Bill Gates philosophy that, you should have 12 months worth of wages in the bank. We call it the war chest. Right. So, we've always been at around 6 to 9 months. Well, this year we've hit the 12-month mark for every single company. Now, what does that actually mean for me? It means I can go and make any investment I want at any time. I basically can go walk in with cash and go bang. Right. But it's not for that purpose. So this year I've gone, you know what? Can I swear? Am I allowed to swear on here?
Go for it, mate. Go for it.
Basically, I went, fuck it. I'm going to go 10x. We're going to 10x the company. Right. And what did that mean? So during the break, while all my staff basically all came back from work on the 13th. Right. So I gave them from the 20th to the 13th off. That's the first time we've gone here. Guys have 3 weeks off. Our media company had skeleton staff running, but everyone else off. I ran everything on my own. And it's been on top of my wife. So that's what I'm saying. I had already planned this, but nothing changed. I wasn't any more bloody exhausted than I normally am. I wasn't like, so I tested it on myself in the harshest conditions. I'm one of those, you know how you guys do your CrossFit challenges? I do that in business, right? Like and anyone that knows me, my mentors, they just like, you are a nut job. The way you do that to yourself. And I'm like, well, it's no different to how people train. And I think that is my mindset from when I was a professional athlete. Do you know what I mean? And as a rugby player, you win the game in the last 10 minutes. You win or lose it in that. So if you're playing full 80 minutes, this is before I played before they even understood what a fucking interchange bench was. It was like, you're meant to sub people out at like 65 minutes after they've taken 75,000 body shots, right? No, back then it was like, you play, you're a best player, you play. And that's why my career ended at like 22. But I guess the exciting part of all that is that's the only thing that I will do differently, and we are already doing it. So, and the other thing that I'm really trying to do this year is I want to get my health in check. So not only have I committed to the goals that I want to achieve, but I've committed to a new set of standards. And that's something that a lot of people fail to understand. You can have goals, but if you've got no standards, well, then you're screwed. So some of the things that I'm talking about in standards is I need to eat at least 250 grams of net protein a day, right? So that means a half a kilo steak at nighttime isn't even going to cut the base of that, right? I can't eat that much food. Like for a big guy.
250 is a lot.
Yeah, like translate, you need to eat more. Like you're still not eating anywhere near enough. I said, mate, I can't eat it because I've conditioned myself not to eat, and that's why I put on all this weight. Now I've got some hormonal imbalances and I've got some other complications. I've got 2 inoperable adrenal tumors. Like there's a lot of shit going on in my life, but I let none of those, and this goes back to my 10X vision. None of those things get in the way of what I need to do. Those competing priorities are just another line item on my schedule, right? And so now it's kind of like, okay, so what are the extra things that I need to throw in? So one of the things that I started last week, it's killing me. I bought an assault bike, right? I've had it for a couple of years. Well, I've had it for a year. I didn't ride it at all except once. And then I'm looking at it and I thought, fuck this. It's got to come out of the garage. It's got to go in my home office. Mate, I get up. So remember that morning routine? I get the sneakers that are right next to the bike, right? Slide them on, I get on, and I go hard for 20 minutes. I go 30-second sprint, 30-second rest. Now, by your standards, I'm probably not hitting a lot of watts. My sprint is 450 watts, right, for 30 seconds, and then I rest at 150, right? Now, because I'm crazy, the 450 goes up to about 550 by the last 3 or 4, and my rest is 220, right? So, and that's just because I want to keep pushing myself. Now, I've done that for 7 days, 8 days straight now, and I love it. The first 3 days, I was like, what am I doing to myself? And then I just remembered, you got to set that standard. If I want to hit if I want to hit that 130 kg with 14% body fat, I know that sounds nuts, but I'm a massive unit.
Awesome.
Right? Well, I mean, in September, I was 198.7. It was 198 kilograms, not
pounds.
Fucking pounds, right? That was like a 500-pound unit.
Yeah.
Now we're down to 184, I think it is, 183.7. And the muscle stack is what we measure. So we've got another DEXA scan coming up, I think, end of Jan. We try and do it every 4 months to then really be able to assess it. We were hoping to better results. But I think the point that I'm saying to you is it's the standard you set. So I got to eat the 250 grams of protein every day. No excuses. I've got to drink 4 to 5 liters of water. I've got to make sure that I'm doing my HIT in the morning to get the cardio in, and then I go and train. So I train 4 times a week with Trent, but then I also do 3 leg sessions on top of that, at a specialist gym for my lower back. So it's those things, but that's the shit that I didn't do for 14 years that landed me in this condition, right? And that's probably one of the key messages I want to say to anyone out there, right? Don't allow bullshit excuses when it comes to your health, because now I'm feeling the repercussions of it. As I said, there's a few health complications that I'm working through. But again, my mindset doesn't allow that shit to get in the way. But again, hold yourself to bigger standards. So, I've always been really good at businesses. And when I say really good, that doesn't mean I've always succeeded, Blake. People always think that when, we hear all these fucking people say how wonderful they are, and it's all great, but I bet you failed. Just admit it. You can't be vulnerable enough to say that you fucked up. Like, of course, I say I fuck up all the time, and that's because I actually don't avoid conflict. Someone asked me just this morning, and they said, what defines successful people? And I said, successful people, right, don't avoid conflict. They embrace it. Out of everything, that is probably one of the number one rules that I'd love for your listeners to totally understand. Successful people, right, don't avoid conflict. They embrace it. And it's not conflict just between people. It's conflict internally, right? The amount of excuses that I have made to allow myself to get to 198.7 kilos. And even though I've got legitimate medical reasons, it's still bullshit, right? Like you have to set yourself up to succeed. So for me, standards is the next big thing for the year. So have goals, but then set your standards, right? And if you don't do them, well, there are repercussions. So then reward yourself too. We can get that conversation later about how I reward myself.
One thing that stands out to me off the back of what you said around the 10x vision, and I guess the implementation at times been easier than the 2x. And if people haven't read 10x is easier than 2x, it's an excellent book.
Dan Sullivan's book, yeah.
Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah.
One of their core themes in that book is in order to 10x, you often have to cut a lot. When you're looking at you 10xing, what needs to be cut in order for you to make a jump of that size?
Well, interesting. Because I run pretty lean, I don't have to cut anything. So the advantage is that last year, actually, no, I'll explain what I did last year. So in order for me to 2x, I looked at all the constraints that I could see across the group. And I was like, okay, that's holding me back. That's holding me back. That's holding me back. And I was like, okay, so what I started doing is reviewing and interviewing my entire team, right? As in like my senior people. So there's 5 senior people. And I was like, okay, let's work through your task order. Let's understand, what do you do every day, right? Because they don't work in the office with me, right? Except one person. The rest are remote. I got no visibility. And I'm not a massive fan of flexible working from home bullshit, right? Especially considering I have clients who have 400 employees, right? Okay. And I do a lot of work in manufacturing, in medical. So I'm chairman of a day hospital, of a large scale engineering firm, right? Of an energy company. And, these are places where you can't work from home. If you're a doctor, if you're one of the 13 doctors in our day hospital, you're going to be there, right? So I can see truly what works and what doesn't work. So we went around and basically what I said to my team is, look, I think you're incredibly valuable, but I don't need you for 40 hours a week, right? And they went, you're right. Because I made them do the exercise. And they're like, you only really need me for 8 hours. And we went that hard because I'm not fearful of the conflict. But what I then did is I got my GM, for example, and I said, okay, let's go get you a different job. What? She's like, I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. Let's go out and look for the dream job, but you still work for me for those 10 hours a week. I'll pay you a fixed retainer as a contractor. I did this for like my three or four key people. I reduced my overhead by like $500,000, but they all made an extra 40 to 50 grand a year on their income getting their dream job. So it's a win-win, right? So does that make sense? So I don't believe in cutting. I believe in adding value. Does that make sense? So if I'm gonna do anything, and I think this is where I'm a little bit different than Dan Sullivan, right? Who's strategic coach, the program, and that's because I have just a different mentality. I think everyone's got a win-win. Blake, when I grew up, a lot of people don't know, but I grew up in kind of the investment banking world. I was working as a waiter, as a hospo guy, and the CEO of a investment bank came in, had dinner, left me 25% of the bill as a tip, came back the following week, was flying into Adelaide for this. I used to work at Red Ochre, so one of the best Australian native restaurants in the country, if not the world. And Andrew Filkey, BBC chef, was there. I mean, you'd get this is your old man. Your dad's a celebrity chef. So basically, and your brother is a chef too, kind of celebrity in his own right. But yeah, I think what was really cool about that, they came back 3 times, and they were interviews, and they took me all around the world eventually to get into this market that I didn't quite understand, right? And so I learned some really valuable lessons there, but what I learned was cutthroat, and this is the point I'm making. It was never win-win. In that space, it's how much do you win? Greed wins. And I took that with me and built a $30 million business or a group of companies when I came back to Australia, and it worked for me, and then it all collapsed, right? And so what I've now learned, and what I say to people all the time, what wins is a win-win. A win-win. Don't ever, and I learned that doing the Harvard negotiation program. Oh, wow, now it's like 6 years ago, right? And it was the best experience of my life because it was like the tipping point moment. If you don't, if in any kind of a relationship, partnership, business venture, whatever it might be, even conversation, if you can't achieve a win-win outcome, someone's losing. Make everyone feel like they're winning. Now, a lot of people always say to me, my wife always says to me, it's funny though, I feel like I win, but I know that you've won more. And it's like, well, I'm always going to win more, right? I'm doing the negotiation, but you've got to feel like that was a really good outcome for you. And so that's the approach that I take to adding value, Blake. So when I talk about cutting, that's what I did. I went back and just looked at where were my constraints, identified that my constraints was my human resources, not my infrastructure. And because to me, there are 4 barriers to growth, right? There is people, there is leadership, there is marketing, and there's infrastructure, right? They're the 4 universal barriers to growth, right? A lot of people say it's cash. Cash is a byproduct of those things, right? And anyone out there that's listening who says leads is a fucking problem, you're an idiot, right? Leads are not your problem. It's your messaging that's the problem. Okay. If you're not relating to those people, then that's your problem. So focus on that. Don't focus on chucking more money at something to try and get more people in the door, right? Especially if your customer service experience is shithouse, right? Like, don't even try and do that. I frequent a few of your brothers' venues. Why? Because the service is good, the food's excellent, and we go back and the guys, unless they're changing staff, they remember who we are because one of them's just up the road. And, we're big fans of Dolly. Mind you, I think I've spent more money in some of the other places because I go there after big events. The sandwich bars aren't for me, okay? I can't eat the carbs. But yeah, so I think that in terms of cutting, I want to make that distinction because, I can go into organizations and bleed them if I want to make a profit. That doesn't actually work because that's never going to help you grow. Growth is expensive, right? Like that's the biggest myth that people think, oh, let's grow. Growth is expensive, right? Especially if you haven't got a bloody good strategy, right? If you haven't got the KPIs in place, if you haven't got the milestones set in concrete. And that's why we celebrate a lot, Everything we do, we run in quarterly cycles with 30-day game plans. Right. And people are like, you're a freak. I'm like, what's the only way to do it? Right. If you want to run multiple companies, you've got to be organized. Right. So does that kind of help? I hope you
super helpful. Yeah, I find it fascinating. One of the things that you mentioned there was around leadership being one of the 4 key factors. Yep. Where have you had to level up and in what ways have you had to level up to not be the bottleneck by your own leadership?
Look, a long time ago, I read a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. If anyone in business, if you haven't read it, or anyone in leadership, you haven't read it, you have to read it. It's, I don't know how many millions and millions of copies it sold. Jim Collins is like my idol. He's a rock climber as well in his spare time. I can't climb rocks. I can't even lift myself. I can't even do one pull up. But Jim was a Stanford grad school professor, and actually his first book that he wrote with Bill Lazare called Beyond Entrepreneurship, I've just done a new one called, well, no, 2-3 years ago, called Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, as a prelude and as a kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Gratification to Bill Lazare, who passed away, I think 2019 or 2020. And that's the first book anyone should pick up and read. The founders of Netflix pretty much said that was the reason they built Netflix, and that's how they got through it. The first version, but by 2.0, because Jim Collins narrates all the additional things they learned in 30 years of research. And in that book, Good to Great, he talks about level 5 leadership. And level 5 leadership, you've got to have what we call level 5 ambition, right? And so many leaders have 1, 2, 3 levels of ambition, right? You've got to have, things like productive paranoia, right? So that means you've got to look at the numbers. I'm a numbers guy, Blake. Kristian Livolsi 1.0, who'd had like 30 ventures, 40 ventures by the time he was 30, who failed at least 15 times, and, failed catastrophically and had to couch surf at the age of 33 after being pretty much semi-retired. He never looked at his numbers. No, it was ego. Let's fuel it with ego. Let's go out and be successful. Let's get in every magazine and every paper. Let's, being on page 3 wasn't enough. It's like, I want to be on the fucking cover of that magazine. And it was like, dickhead, look at the numbers, right? And I didn't look at the numbers. And so I became, Jim Collins talks about productive paranoia. And so I started becoming productively paranoid. And that concept is actually a Bill Gates concept. So that's one of the things. There's a bunch of other things you need to do. But to me, leadership is something you have to invest in. It doesn't mean you have to go and do fancy courses and get a leadership coach, right? Most leadership coaches haven't led anyone, I've found. For that matter, most coaches have done fuck all in their life, which is really hard for people to work out. And that's why I don't say I'm a coach. I'm a consultant. I tell you what you need to do. My team of coaches will then help you stay accountable and do it. Again, leadership is playing to your strengths. So you need to identify your strengths. In an organization, you got to build layers of leadership, Blake. So in the big companies that I work with, most of the time when I start with them, there's a founder, a CEO. They're turning over $2-3 million. They've been wearing all the hats. They're burnt out as all fuck for working, 70 hours a week. And guess what? They lack delegation. And when you look down, the first thing you say to them is like, how many direct reports do you have? Oh, everyone. And I'm like, well, there's your problem, mate. How are you leading them? I'm not. I said, of course you're not. I'm glad that you've identified that you're incompetent. And, I'm like that. I speak like that to them. And they look at me and they're like, well, I said, well, if you can't deal with the harsh reality of what you're doing, you're literally burning your business. You're lucky that you're making $100,000 or $200,000 a year. Like, you're lucky. Really? And they go, like, you're insulting me? I'm like, mate, if you can't handle me, you can't work with me. Like, it's pretty straightforward. And I have to speak to you like this because that's how I wish someone had spoken to me when I was doing what I was doing. And so what you got to do is you got to build layers of leadership. So you got to go, okay, so who's next in my team? And so I give you some examples. Like in the engineering firm, we went in there and they had like the owners and then 2 people. Now, 3 years down the track, and I won't talk revenue because it's exponential. And there's a big announcement February 6th happening with several ministers about this business. And they're an extraordinary family business of 40 years. They started off fixing tractors for farmers. Now they build bridges and tunnels, right? Like we're talking unbelievable. It's like my pride and joy. I can't talk about, I talk about it. There's Bohu Engineering. And they're 160 kilometers out of Adelaide. It's a regional business taking on the world. It's like it's the gift from God that I was given to be able to work with them. And I've loved it, right? And I wrote their strategy and then I became chairman of their company. And we've gone from having a male leader to a female CEO. Like these are all parts of the strategies. And so what we've done now, they've got 4 layers of leadership from the top. So at any given point, we've got no key person risk, which is like, before they couldn't go away. They went for 5 weeks to Europe, husband and wife, and like, they're like, this was really good. I said, I'm going to let you buy yourself a business class ticket. Like, nah, we can't do it. Like real humble people. And I said, I don't give a shit what you say. At least one of the legs you've got to do in Q suites. Right. And they did. And they were like, it was unbelievable. Like, I could sleep the whole time. I'm like, yeah, but you deserved it. You've earned it. Right. And these guys have worked really, really hard. And so we've invested a lot of time in building the future leaders of the business. What does that also do is it helps with retention. They've got a 92% retention rate, right? They're an employer of choice. So when I talk leadership, there is a lot of layers to leadership. There's self-leadership. I look at some of your content and I'm like, mate, you know how to lead yourself. You've got so much discipline that is frightening, right? And that's the biggest issue, right? Most people don't have discipline, right? So how do you lead if you've got no discipline? Well, one of my mentors always said to me, Kristian, you'd almost be perfect if you weren't so fat. And I was like, motherfucker, right? Okay. And because I don't feel conflict, I just went, yeah, well, we both know all the excuses that are going to come out of my mouth. And he just looked, I'll never forget, because this was only 2 years ago. And I said, you really believe that though? He goes, mate, you got discipline everywhere in your life except that one area, right? And it's only because you don't have any standards. And that's what I'm saying. Like, for me, self-leadership is something you do over time, right? And mate, if I showed you my report cards when I went to school, and I got expelled from 2 schools, suspended at least 7 times. I'm pretty sure I still hold the school record for the number of Friday and Saturday detentions at St. Peter's College. And it was a lot. There was a lot of those green slips and white slips. But it was always self-discipline required. That were the days where teachers actually wrote report cards, not got ChatGPT to spit out something. And if it wasn't for all those teachers that I had, that they believed in me and they encouraged me, I, probably would have left school. And they were really good to me. And that's why my son goes there, because I'm like, hey, out of all the other schools, they didn't want to keep me. These guys kept me. But it was self-discipline. And honestly, for me, like, it took me a lifetime, and I'm still trying to learn it. And I'm happy to admit that to people. I got it right in business, but in my own vitality, I missed it. Right. And so that's what, again, going back to your original question, that's what I'm putting effort in. And again, that's self-leadership. You've got to make a commitment to yourself. Right. And, did it hurt when he said to me, you're almost perfect, other than the fact that you're a fat bastard? I was like, well, you're right, but I don't actually give a shit. And that's the biggest problem. Right. Like, my health has never really been something I've cared about until I had children. And then it really ramped up when, the day before Lucy and I were getting married, in 2022, and we've been together for 10 years. We've had children, and I had to go in for a particular scan, and I got told, yeah, we actually think that you've got tumors on your adrenal glands. And I'm like, day before my wedding, this is great, right? And then I never forget, December 9th was when I got the full complete diagnosis, and they're like, yeah, it's even more rare than we thought. You've got them on both adrenal glands and they're inoperable. So kind of consider yourself living day by day. And that's when it really hit. And that's when I started looking at, what do I need to do? To get, the day hospital that I'm chairman of is a specialist cancer hospital working on tumor regression. And I thought, fuck, man, I've got all the tools here in front of me and I'm not using them. This is just stupid. And that was the tipping point for that. Right. And so I think that there's so many lessons in this. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day long, because I'm vulnerable. I want people to know that there's all this truth behind everything. And I think that our goal as people, we're on this earth to create and expand. Right. And when you're selfless about that, create and expand. And my purpose is to help people live their best life. So that they can actually do all the things they want, right? Like, my whole philosophy is freedom, right? Doing whatever the fuck you want, when you want, how you want it, with who you want to do it. And I think that's why I love to just share everything with people. And my team are like, Kristian, you don't do podcasts. What are you doing? I'm like, well, I like Blake. I reckon I could have a great conversation with him. And now this year, that's the other thing. It's like, okay, we're gonna do podcasts. We're gonna do a lot of podcasts. Let's get on here and tell the story from, from my eyes. Remember, this is only from my own perspective. It's not, but I think ultimately what's really important, if you haven't noticed, I read, right? I never was a reader. I hadn't even read my own book, right? Like I've got an Amazon top 100 book and as a bestseller, and I hadn't even read my own book from cover to cover after I'd written it because I got copy editors and everyone else to do it. And then I finally read it, and it was actually Toby Pierce from Sweat.
Yeah.
Toby said to me, we're having breakfast one day, and this was 2 years ago. This is before they sold Sweat. And he said to me, Kristian, you're a really smart guy. Do you read? I said, no. What do you mean? And Toby reads like a book a week. And he said, let's do it. Let's read a book a week. You should do that. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to hold myself to that standard. And I said, and I remember saying to him, we're at Pickle in the Middle on Only Road. And I said, but mate, I'm dyslexic and I have ADHD. Reading is hard work. And he goes, read 10 pages a day. Start with that. Put on an audiobook. And then I said, is there anything you recommend? And he said to me, Jim Quick's book, Limitless. And, Toby, if you check out this podcast, because I know you listen to them, thanks again. I think I've thanked you at least 50 times in the last 2 years. It was and he's a really smart dude. Like I'm talking for someone his age, he was miles ahead of where I was at his age, right? Like he's miles ahead. And one of them is he's a prolific learner, wants to learn, dives into it. And whereas I'm a problem solver, and so I like to get my hands dirty like a mechanic. Not anymore. So now I read a book a week. It's been I did that last year. This year I've already read 4. And these aren't short. Like I've just finished reading a book that took 16 hours to listen to at 1.4 speed. Right?
That's a lot bigger than the
these are big books. It's a very old school book. It's called The Goal. It's about manufacturing. It's pre-lean, like when Toyota and Hitachi and all those companies, and it's all about America and the changeover post the vehicle industry change. So it's if you're into that, amazing. Like the amount of lessons in that book are amazing, like amazing. I can't talk any more highly about it. And so I'm going back reading books that are 40, 50 years old now, because success and failure leave clues, mate. And that's a lot of the new books today, they're written by ChatGPT. So you got to be really careful the crap that you're reading. So yeah, but anyway, hopefully that I didn't digress too far from the question, but yeah, hopefully that gives you some insight.
I often sit with this question, and it's come up again off the back of something that you said. How you do anything is how you do everything. And I dance between seeing it and also not seeing it. And the reason I'm interested in your thoughts is because of what you said before about your relationship to discipline and the exercise part of it.
Yep.
How do you think about a statement or a motto, whatever it's called, like that, knowing that for you, you're well oiled and dialed in the majority of your life, and up until recent times you've probably dropped the ball on the exercise side of things. So how do you deem a statement or a motto like that?
I don't know if I've got an opinion on it. I think the reality of it is the motto though is embrace or seen and be seen, right? Like So can you just tell me the motto again?
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, good. I think that that statement says to me is it could also be flipped. The amount of energy you put into something is the outcome you're going to get. Does that make sense? And 100%. And I'm a big believer in Tony Robbins's phrase where focus goes, energy flows. Right. And so I think your statement is a good one. And I flip it by saying, the effort you put in is the outcome you're going to receive, right? And I guess for me, the effort I've put into business has given me plenty of financial freedom, particularly in the last 6-7 years. And I've compounded the learnings from that to be able to get better and better and better at it. With my vitality, I put zero effort for all those years. I mean, anyone that knows me knows that I love wine and I love whiskey. I love stogies and I love food. That's why I know who your dad is, because I used to be a chef and I trained under Gordon Ramsay in the UK at Aubergine back in the 90s. I did 6 months as an apprentice, essentially under Le Cordon Bleu. And, I've had a passion for food my whole life and good food. And so I like going out for 5 to 8 course degustations. And, when you're starting to match them with 150 calories in every glass and you get to the 7th or 8th glass, you start to accumulate the calories. So, mate, I'm fully across this. And so I think for me, it was, so I don't drink at the moment. I haven't drunk anything for 20 weeks. I drank a couple of glasses. I opened up a Blanc de Blanc Runa champagne on Christmas Day and I smashed a couple of glasses of that. 100 ml pours, right? So it was only about 110 calories in it. I'm not fucking calorie counting, all right? But yeah, smashed a couple of glasses of that and felt like, I didn't really miss it. And, we had family over. We did that. Then New Year's Eve, we went to friends' houses where, I got a pretty big cellar, 2,500 bottles. And so I pulled out a couple of 1998s, that kind of vintage, older wines. And I think, what do we have? A 389, a 98 basket press. So, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to drink the good shit. But again, I only had, my wife looked at me. She's like, I can't believe it. You're just not drinking, but you are smoking the stogies. I was like, don't worry. Got to have a stogie a week. Right, like Arnold Schwarzenegger is my hero, right? And have you listened to his book, Be Useful?
No, I haven't.
Oh, mate, listen to it. It is, you don't read it, listen to it, because he narrates it, and it is funny, man. Like, it is so funny. And he sits there at one point, and he goes, "My favorite pastime in the world," with his accent, is to sit in the jacuzzi smoking a stogie, and you can picture him, right? And it's like, he's not lying. I sit in my swimming pool, man. I've a stogie in my hand, right? It's one of those things, like, and I do a lot of creative thinking. So, by the way, I'm not condoning smoking. I do support cigar smoking, but not cigarettes. I'm not sure that I could even differentiate between the two for people. But yeah, so I think for me, the discipline was, I didn't want to give up those things. Does that make sense? So I really fought. And then when I decided to train with Trent went, when you used to train with me 10 years ago and you were a unit, when you met your wife and she could dangle off your bicep. I'm like, yep, I remember that. He goes, you used to drink 4 bottles of Dom Perignon and spray it over people. Do you remember that? I'm like, yes, I know. I was a lunatic. I get it. You don't have to remind me. He goes, you're now 47 years old, 46 years old. You ain't got that luxury, buddy, right? Already at 35, 36, getting you fit was like a massive thing. But he goes, you were only 160 kilos then. And we got you down to 134 or something, right? That were the days I benched 260 kilos, right?
Jesus.
I'm up to 160 kilo bench now on 15 reps. So power is not my problem, right?
Yeah.
It's maintaining it. And as I say that, I did crossovers yesterday. My chest is killing me. But it's the discipline. And so I made a decision to myself. I said, and I'm not when I say I can drink, I don't drink a lot. Even then I was drinking 2-3 times a week. We're not the type of house where we open a bottle of wine and have a glass of wine, with dinner. It's like we eat, we want our children not to grow up in that, every single day. But when we entertain, we can drink. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to give this a go. All the other successful people, they're all stopped drinking. But what I didn't want was me to make it an extreme condition, because That's where I failed in the past. I'm a great extremist. I can go do anything full throttle, right? It's the ADHD. I swear it has to be the ADHD. And so I think for me, Blake, it really came down to I'm going to make this decision for me. And then that's why at Christmas I thought, you know what? I'll have a glass. And then Boxing Day, we went to a mate's house and we're smoking stogies in his cellar, drinking some good reds. I only had 3, I intentionally drove. And over 5 hours, I had 3 glasses of red, good reds. I think it was a 2010 Meshack. I even remember a Manamon Ra from '05. Like wine is like my other business, you know, and it was great, but it was great to have 3 drinks and be done with it, you know, and then waking up, coming home. I don't get hangovers. That's what is probably, I should probably make that clear for people. I've had like, I think 3 hangovers in my whole life. And now I know why people hate them, right? And I think mine are predominantly dehydration based rather than hangovers. And so my wife used to hate that about me. She's like, you could drink all night long and then wake up and go and do whatever you want to do. I'm like, yeah, I guess it's the hospo in me that you know, kept me that way. But I guess it's about having that discipline to be able to say, I'm going to do that. It was like the discipline with food. My relationship with food was shit because I didn't care about what I was putting in my body, right? Now I look at food over the last 60, I've been conditioning my mind to look at food and go, you know what? That's not 250 grams worth of protein. That's not going to contribute, right? That's a carbohydrate, right? Like that burger end looks really interesting, but it's laced with chemicals. That's the shit I'm telling myself, right? You know, and I don't mind a burger in every now and then. But it was even like the killer for me is double cooked fat, like duck fat fries, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is like and you look at them and you go, okay, I can't say they're cooked in shit. I can't complain about them. And I just go, all right, I'm allowed 1 cheat day a week, but I'm going to do it. Now, I'm not on a keto program because I have to eat the, fucking, I don't know, 85 grams of basmati rice twice a day, right? Oh, don't even get me started, right? But the reality of it is it's about getting those macros right. But like Trent said, let's keep it real simple. 250 grams of protein. If you can hit that number, right, and drink your water, I think, you know, the rest of it, I know you're going to be in control. And the hardest thing is having the kids, right? The kids, mate, you wait. Oh, you wait. Well, as soon as they hit 2 and they just want food all the time, and all of a sudden it's easier to pick something up and you don't have to cook it and you don't have to think about it. It's like, you know, I mean, I went as hardcore as going back to making my own meals and 4 meals a day, pre-packed once a week. And then Lucy looks at me, she goes, you've had enough of this. I've fucking had so much. And I owned a food business that I sold to a very large retailer, an online food business that I did in 2013. So it's not like I don't understand and again, this is the point I'm making. It's not like I don't understand the macros and the nutrition. It's laziness, right? So yeah, does that kind of, so if we go back to that statement, right, it's what you decide to put in it. Like the effort you put in is the outcome you're going to get out. And I think that's, you know, a complimentary comment to what you're saying. And so I think for me, the moment you start thinking about it, right? Like, so since New Year's, I haven't had a drink and I won't. Like, you know, I've got to go to a champagne dinner February 6th at the track. So, and I think there's, you know, 2013 Dom Perignon, and I think the winemaker from Aras is coming with an 08. Like, you know, because I'm in these groups, right? And, you know, of course, I'll indulge that one night. And I'll look forward to it. And I think that's, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that's the reward. Remember I said earlier, I have ways of rewarding myself. So now it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that as a reward, right? And we're going out with, you know, a close group of friends. There's 3 couples, and we do that always together. Like every quarter, we'll try and do something cool like that. That's an experience, right? Does that make sense? So rather than consuming for the sake of consuming, I've now kind of rewired my brain to go, okay, if I'm going to consume, it's got to be an experience. Does that make sense? And that's probably 100%. Been a big tipping point.
Yeah, that's excellent. Mate, I mean, we haven't even really kind of spoken about the different business groups and stuff that you run, but for those that want to find out more about your business groups, where's the best spot to send them?
Well, I'm very lucky. I'm the only Kristian Livolsi with a K in the world, right?
So I know the feeling, brother. There's only one Blake Worrall-Thomspon. It's easy
there you
to find.
Go, right? And so it's really easy. Like if you just go and type in Kristian Livolsi, you'll find me. The easiest place is kristianlivolsi.com.au. That'll lead you to places where our websites need a lot of work. We haven't looked at them for a couple of years. Again, because we don't use them as our platform to sell and for people to connect with us. But more importantly, I got a pretty active YouTube channel. We've only got a couple of thousand subscribers. I think it's less than that, actually. I think it's like 1,700 and something. But, we got a lot of watch hours, which is really cool. So people tend to binge on, I don't know why, on some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth. And we're really ramping that up now with, I brought in a digital content creation team, as I was saying to you off air earlier. So, Kristian Livolsi, YouTube, IG account, they're probably the areas that we play a bit more in. And yeah, just, go check out what we say. And, hopefully there's something there that inspires you and helps you take action. And, if anyone out there is looking for, strategy development or business advice, hit me up on IG. I'm in the chats. That's normally the easiest place. I have 4 VAs that work for me as well, so you'll know if it's not me talking to you pretty quickly. But if you said that you know Blake, BWT, right? If you know Blake and you heard us on the podcast, then yeah, I'll jump straight on and have a yarn to you. And if you got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm always happy to give away, whatever knowledge I have to people, because I think it's really important to share it. And if you've got a business that that wants to scale and grow, then by all means, I can have that conversation with you too. You might have to get through a couple of people along the way before you get to me. But again, if they mention you, Blake, then I'm more than happy to jump on. And it's funny, we've got a few friends in common too. I noticed that Jonah was on this podcast. He used to serve me loads of champagne at the Lion. Right?
Really?
Oh, dude, you ask him the wild days that me, him, Sambo, Lucy, Travis, my God, they were insane. Toby, when he was running it.
Yeah, he's still really
Mark
close
Huber.
mates with Toby. Really close mates, yeah.
Well, Toby's, our boys go to school together.
Ah.
Yeah. So that means you know Dorman too, Steve.
No, I don't. But
No?
Janelle's actually staying with us. He'll be back here soon, so I'll be telling him he's staying with us for a week in Byron. But
Is he?
I had
He's
no
a good guy.
idea of the connection. There you go.
Yeah. So Steve's son and my son are mates at school. They're in the same year. But yeah, I saw Toby when I see him where were we? Some training. We're picking up the boys, and I hadn't seen him for a while. So, and again, they've had a wonderful time, and they're career hospo boys that then went out and built breweries and distilleries and whatnot. And I take my hat off to them. They work their ass off and they get the job done, and and then they've got bucket loads of other investments now. So, but yeah, no, it's a small world.
Small world, Adelaide.
Yeah, and but I really appreciate hanging out with you, and any time that you want to have a chat, hit me up. It's is that it? Did we get through all the questions?
Mate, it was brilliant, and it was brilliant, and yeah. So I knew there was going to be plenty of value that you brought for the guys. I wasn't sure which direction it was going to go, but yeah, mate, so much value that.
Mate, if we do it again, it'll go in another direction.
Oh, no doubt.
It is just the insanity of the way my brain thinks. But no, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed chatting to you, and I really enjoyed meeting your brother for the first time when you hooked us up. And interestingly, when we walked into one of his places, Toby, the wine sommelier or the wine guy, is a guy I went to school with, Toby Porter. So it was like, it's such a small world, you walk into these places, and I think and I think that's really important too, to finish up on that. The world is really well connected. When I studied hotel management with the Swiss Hotel Association and did Le Cordon Bleu, they told us something that really never hit home until much later in my life. And I wish I'd listened to it earlier. The world is really small. And I was like, what do you mean? The world's huge. You're 18 and you're on top of the world and you think the world, no, the world's really small. Network. Look after your relationships, nurture people, give more than you receive. And those things have served me really well, through the trials, the tribulations, the success, you need people around you when you're winning and when you're losing. And I think that's, it's something that, when I look at the content that you share with your audience, I mean, apart from the fact that all of you guys are like super fit athletes, it pisses me off. I'm coming for you, but I'm more of the Rock version. Okay.
Yeah, I get it.
If I can even look like a tent like the Rock, I'd be satisfied. Well, the tent is the bald head.
You're already halfway there.
But no, seriously, Blake, I think I see the reps that you're doing in your own business too, because we're in the same coaching circle, and I love the questions that you ask. And I think the reason why I'm saying this, and hopefully you don't cut this out, I think it's important for your own listeners to understand the amount of work and effort that you put in behind the scenes. And you're probably thinking, what, you pay that much attention? I pay attention to the people that matter inside that group. I support a handful. We've got our own squad too. You might want to hang out with us at some point. Where we hang out every week and we talk how to actually grow and scale our businesses, because we're big firm believers that the pie is big enough for everyone. So how do we actually just help each other get the freedom that we all deserve? And I say that, and you in particular, mate, I see how hard you work by the questions you ask. And you've got a few fans in there. I think Toby Morrison loves responding to you all the time, right? But and he's a gun. He's another gun. So but the reality of it is, it's doing the reps, man. And I think people listening to this need to understand that you are out there working hard. So if someone's looking to work with you, some of the stuff you talk about blows my mind. I think the other day, what were you talking about? You were talking about sex, the amount of sex that you need to have. Right? And I'm like, okay, where's my wife? You need to follow this. And I was like, she's going to kill me. Right? But just the confidence that you are happy to have those conversations, and you're happy to shake the apple tree. And I think that's so important. I think that was one of the main reasons. Like when you said, "Hey, dude, would you like to come and play?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." Right? Like, I'd love for my audience to get to know you. They could learn a whole bunch of shit from you. And I think that's what's really important. Like when we go live, that's the outcome that I want them to have. I want them to be cool. I'm going to go binge on this stuff, and then if they feel that they can work with you, then by all means, I'll be encouraging them. And I think that's the circular economy that we need to create. And support one another. And I massive believer that you've got to, like I said, like Toby and Dorman, what they did, right? Like Toby and Steve, I take my hat off to those blokes. Like they had the courage to build a brewery, to then market it, to then the cider company, to then the distillery, then to an exit, and then to work through the challenges of an exit, and then to go through all those bits and pieces. But they all started at the bottom. I remember Toby went to the same college I went to, right? So, and then, him, I think Mark went there too. And I think, then they, inevitably, went and ran the Lion, which at the time was the most successful hotel in the state. And it wasn't just a pub. It was like a proper bar, club. I mean, I spent so much money there as a kid. No, but I'm talking like my bills were like $2,500 a night. That was stupid. And it was like, you think now, I'm like, I wouldn't spend that. Right? Like, how did I spend that? I couldn't have drunk that much on my own. And I think there's this final memory of that. I think Sambo, last time I spoke to him was a while ago, but he said to me ages ago, I still think you hold the record for the biggest drink order of 100 shots lined up. Now, you would never be able to do that today with the rules.
Yeah.
And I think they were fresh pussies. I think that was the shots of choice. And literally, I didn't have 100 friends. It was like I bought shots for everyone at the bar.
That's so good. That is a big
I think
order.
Ryan Wilson was DJing that night.
Yeah, DJ Relax.
Yeah, good mate of mine. I miss him. Since he moved, we haven't hung out for a long time. But yeah, but this is what I'm saying. The world is so connected, and we all do stupid shit. And I guess what I'm trying to say through my stories is not how fucking cool I was. It's quite the contrary. It's like we do shit, right? We grow up. Okay, if I went back and said anything, profound to my younger self, it would be, instead of drinking the muddy and partying like a mofo, right? I should have bought more property.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I look back now, I'm like, I could have had like 10 houses by now. right? But and that's because I was making money. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so when you're young, you make money and you think it's always going to be there. And then when you don't have it anymore, and for me, I made it, then made it again, and still had that same fucking cycle. And it was, for me, the children broke that cycle. Meeting Lucy, my wife, was like the best thing ever happened to me. And I like to finish on that because she's the most important person in my life. And I'm not trying to win any brownie points. She is the most important person in my life. And, even this morning I said to her, if something happened to you, Luch, I don't think I'd ever get remarried. And she looked at me, she goes, really? I said, no. It took me that long to decide to get married in the first place. I said, I'd just focus on our kids. Like there would be, focus on my kids and my business because that's what matters to me. And it's a really interesting, it's very powerful, and we looked at each other and because I get this from your content. Like I look at you guys and I'm like, I can have this conversation with you. And I think it's really important to have those, Anyway, man, we probably both got to go. I'm like looking at time and shit. I've actually got a strategy call, like a proper, not a sales call, but like strategy session with a client at 12 o'clock my time. Mate, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you. And yeah, we should probably hang out more often, not on air, so we can jam on some stuff. So that'd be really
Mate, I'm keen. Great
and
to have you on.
Congratulations for April to both
Yes.
of you. I think that's epic, man. I think you can see it. That's a genuine smile. That is
I love it.
I think it's going to transform your lives, and you've been blessed with a gift, and you've got to embrace it.
Mate, I'm pumped. Thanks for coming on again.
That's all right. My pleasure, Blake. Anytime.